Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Repackaging Revolution. I'm David Marinak, your host, with a friend of mine, Joe Prankus. Now, Joe is a past and has several duties, stops along with a who's who of some of the largest companies in the world, McDonald's and some of the biggest brands. Joe's an expert at bag and box, aseptic packaging, the equipment and machinery to make these things work, and frankly, all aspects of multi-million-dollar transactions, start to finish, full stop. My point, Joe knows the packaging industry and is a trusted friend who has spent his career in packaging and is someone I admire and respect. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into the packaging sales part of the industry from our 30-plus years. Joe Prankus, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Nice to be here with you today.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's a thrill for me because it's two packaging guys, two sales guys, Joe, just talking, and one of the things that I knew that you were passionate about, and it kind of came through when we were chatting a little while back, was, the younger group that's out there coming out into the packaging world just doesn't have the skill set or a lot of the skill sets that you and I had to learn on the fly. Is that a fair statement? Meaning where a lot of people are just sort of the book smart, but is being able to really sort of, go and pitch without using a phone or go and visit somebody on the fly and just wing it like the old days. I mean, I just was curious of, just getting started along those lines.
I got a bit of an anecdotal answer to that.
Bring it. This works.
I got invited to a seminar with various generations. And we're talking owner-operators passed down to the first generation, now passed down to the second generation. And the moderator was trying to bridge and educate the generations.
Yep.
And it was so well done that I don't know, there was 200 people in the room, but they said, this is the problem. ABC owner-operator franchisee is having XYZ problem.
Right.
They said, how would you solve this? And one of the panel members was what I would call the tail end of the baby boomers.
Right.
So he said, well, I'd call up the owner-operator, I'd get in the car, I'd go over there, and I'd figure out what's going on. I'd gather the information, and then I'd come back with a solution. There was a couple other people on the panel, and one of the, I don't know if it was X, Y, G or whatever. It was one of the younger folks. Very, very intelligent.
Oh, yeah.
Very brilliant.
Yeah.
Wonderful speaker. And she put up her hand and said, what I would do is I'd get on the phone with the general manager of the location, and I'd ask her to tell me what's going on. The moderator said, well, to the rest of the people there, who would get the better answer?
Yeah, right.
And some of the younger people said, well, of course the younger person would get the better answer because they went to the source of who could give them the best solution or the best identification of the problem.
Right.
And the older generation fellow said, well, that's good, but the relationship has more value than the problem because I'm looking to solve the problem and enhance the relationship. The comeback was something to the effect of, well, it's a problem. We're transactional, solve the problem, move on. So long story short, it stimulated some incredible debate from both particular perspectives, and it was wonderful. I mean, I learned more in that little 15 minutes soliloquy than probably most of the 200 people in the room. But it gets back to knowing your audience, right?
Yep.
And
100%.
then, David, how were you trained? Were you trained to go solve the problem? Is that the ultimate goal, or is the ultimate goal to enhance the relationship? I don't know. I mean, it depends who you're talking to, right?
Yeah, and you're so spot on with that too. And it's. I mean, I could almost have guessed the different groups or the different answers that you would get from that. Meaning, I love the idea and the premise being that there's different thoughts from the younger generation to the older guys and gals like you and me. However, It really is a combination of both of them, Joe, and the fact that getting to the right person is key. But on the flip side, it's also having the relationship to get beyond and find out, how much is this problem costing you? And how are you going to solve this long term? And what have you tried before? And all those kind of things that you and I, instinctively know to do. But there's a lot of people that just don't know how to do it. And it's just, or they've never been trained to do it. And to me, that is a huge issue. And if there's anything that you and I both agree on is, goodness gracious, this younger crowd, the younger generation, they need to know, I guess, I don't even know how to put it. Maybe you have a better way to put it, but pre-internet, Joe, the world was different. We didn't just, and I know you remember this too, we would drive around with a roll of quarters in our pockets, and go to the local gas station that had a phone and make calls, and then drive to the nearest, industrial park, and hopefully that we get in the door. I'm here to talk to Sam. I'm here to talk to Phil. Yeah, I just talked to him on the phone. He said I can come on over. But but these younger folks just don't get it. It's such an interesting, and again, it's a different kind of world. But if there's anything that drives me crazy, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity, is to teach the younger people in general that, at the end of the day, we have to be able to kind of solve a pain point. And sales is not the cheapest price necessarily. It is solving the pain point of whatever that customer is, that ultimately becomes the lowest cost, mind you, but it may not be an apples to apple comparison. Is that a fair statement, Joe?
I would absolutely agree. And, we were trained up with probing questions and,
Yep.
all these techniques to get to the open-ended question gets you everywhere you want to go. And if it's not getting you down the path you want to go, you ask some probing questions, and, and then you kind of sum it up with, hey, if we do what we described here, we'll be able to move forward with you and solve your problem and get the order. And is there anything I missed?
Yeah, right.
As opposed to, something that might be a little bit more direct, a little less time consuming. I mean, in some industries,
a lot,
it's you don't need people.
Yeah.
But packaging certainly isn't one of them. Again, David, one of the issues that I keep looking on and seeing huge gaps and opportunities for young salespeople, businesses, entrepreneurs, is with all the consolidation of the packaging companies. The A-player salesman isn't around as much.
Yep.
I mean, it used to be. Again, I sound like the old man screaming.
No, but I'm right with you.
There was a lot of things that you had like-minded people, like-minded buyers too.
Yep.
That, hey, I don't know everything about a plastic film.
Right.
And quite frankly, I don't need to.
Yes.
That's why I got you.
Exactly.
And I'm going to give you, I got to put XYZ product in here. It's got to sit on the shelf for a year. It can't go bad, and it's got to taste good. And I got to meet all these FDA requirements, and, tell me what the best solution is. And if it's in the neighborhood and in the right economics, we might get out of a rigid, 1 gallon jug, go to a flexible bag.
Yep.
But, without the probing questions, I had an experience here, again, anecdotal, but a young man called me up and said, "Hey, Joe, I got your name from Freddie Lou, and we need XYZ." And I said, "Well, yeah, you're in Chicago. I'm in Chicago. Let's go have a bite to eat and get it done." He goes, "I don't have time." I'm like, "Okay." I go, "Well, then can you get me samples?"
Right.
He's like, "Well, why do you need samples? I'll send you the spec." I go, "Well, sometimes the spec is a little ambiguous, and it, maybe we won't do exactly what's in the spec. Maybe we've got capability in close, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, and maybe it could drive some economics. what are you looking to do on this? Well, I got to get 3 quotes from 3 people. Okay. Well, that's fine. But obviously we didn't move down that path together.
Right.
And as far as I know, he's still sole sourced. But
Well, so that opens up, and it's so interesting because you hit on several topics that I know you'll relate to. I remember when my biggest client back in the day was the Hoover Company, the vacuum cleaner company, and I tried every which way I could to get in the door. And at that time, and I know you can relate to, Joe, was the buyer held all the purse strings. The buyer was the guy that understood the factories, that understood his sources, he understood lead times, he understood. Now, those guys are gone. They were making big money, and a lot of the big companies dumped them, and they replaced them with Betty the clerk buyer. And Betty the clerk doesn't know anything about anything. She just works off a computer that tells her, you better order this, better order more of that. And it's so telling to me how things have changed. And now trying to get, I mean, and I think sort of to your point, a lot of times, Joe, we don't want to talk to the buyer like this person you were just explaining, because they're just getting quotes. They're just looking for quotes to say, well, I did what the boss said to do, is get 3 quotes on this. But they haven't gone into any detail about, to your point, the specs, the samples beyond the specs, because God knows those specs could have been around for the last 15 years, and that could have changed about 10 different times. And there's all this stuff. If there's anything that really is telling that the past buyer, the modern day buyer, is really not a buyer, in my opinion. In most cases, it's a clerk, and it's a matter of getting to a decision maker at a company versus a buyer, and getting to that guy that's got skin in the game, somebody that's either not necessarily has to be a C-suite level, but certainly up there enough that if we don't solve this problem, he's going to be really in deep doo. He's really going to be in trouble. And whereas the buyer is like, well, I don't know. I mean, just remember what it was like with COVID. How many times during COVID that people would reach out to us, and I don't know if you were in the same world, but people would reach out and they're looking to, everybody wanted to get into PPE products, and everybody wanted to sell sanitizer, and everybody this and everybody that. But nobody really was looking at the big picture here, going like, wait a minute. What is the current situation you're facing? When do you need this stuff? When do you have to have it? Has anybody asked those questions? No. And then they leave at 5:00 because, well, I'm done for the day. Meaning the whole world was upside down, Joe. And these buyers, every day they would make the same calls. They would call and they'd say, hey, do you have a canister for hand sanitizer? We talked about this yesterday, Betty. We don't. Okay, thanks. I'm going to call my next 2 suppliers. It didn't matter who she was calling in this instance. It's just that she was told, Joe, every day, call 3 suppliers to see if anything has changed. I find that pathetic. It's just like, oh, are you kidding me? So it's just one of those things that if there's anything I'm passionate about, which I know you are, is that it's almost like we got to go a little bit back old school about the salespeople, the sales reps have to be able to talk intelligently about several different items. And that may not mean that they're going to get the sale necessarily, but they need to be a advisor just as much as a salesperson. And you know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? And
yeah, and just to elaborate on that point a little bit, David, I'll never forget. I had one guy I was working for. He, senior level executive.
Yep.
I'm kind of a vice president level sales, and I got 10, 15 people working for me, customer service, technology, service techs, basically. A good team put together. This person's in a call and says, here's my card. He's telling the senior level people at the large beverage company, one of the largest beverage companies, well, I want you to call me on everything. and a week later, I get this call from a guy at the beverage company. He says, "Hey, Joe, we're having problems over in ABC plant, and can you get a guy on a plane and get over there and get it fixed?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the call." A couple days go by, and the normal reports come in and all that. And the guy knocks on my door. He says, "Hey, Joe, you were in the meeting. That guy's supposed to call me." And I said, don't take this the wrong way, but
that's not happening.
People always call
Yep.
the person they believe that
Yep.
can solve the problem.
Correct.
Not, and it doesn't have anything to do with titles.
Nope.
I mean, our technical service team would get calls from owners, entrepreneurs, vice presidents of technology, and because they were the experts. And we all loved it because that was one less thing we had to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess my point is that everyone's got an idea about how things should work.
Yeah.
You have to be humble. You have to be direct.
Yep.
And you have to be service oriented. It's the old golden rule kind of stuff. I mean, it's really basic, but it's really, really important because you can help a young purchasing agent.
Yep.
You could say to them, hey, Tommy or Sally or whoever, hey, this is what we can do for you. Have you ever thought of this?
Right.
I'll do a quick four slide PowerPoint. Maybe you could take that up the ladder. It might help you in your career. How do you get paid? Maybe I can help you max your bonus.
Yeah.
Exactly. All these kinds of things. I mean, because in fairness to the younger folks, I mean, some of these people are on the clock and, hey, you got to make this many calls.
I know.
To get me a hand pump for sanitizer.
Yep.
Or you're terminated.
Yep.
I mean, and it's not the right way to do business.
No.
But that's some of these, narrow-minded perspectives. And again, anecdotally, I think it goes back to there used to be very strong middle management.
Yes.
There used to be very strong leadership.
Yep.
Leadership can come from the bottom up or the top down.
Yep.
But
yep.
I'm getting off track a little bit.
No,
but,
not really.
Long answer to a short question.
No, because one of the things you taught me too, and I mean this respectfully, is you could be helpful without being walked on. For example, you talk about middle management, and I know that you can relate to this. Doing work, heavy automotive, way back when, and not even way back when, 10 years ago or so, and dealing with a younger, I don't know whether he was a package engineer or / engineer / buyer, whatever it was, but he wanted my take on some sort of a returnable pack for an automotive seat or something. Okay, fine. I was his first call, which I thought, hey, that's great. This is my way in to sell Lear or Johnson Controls or whoever they were. And I did this work and I chased this down and I took the specs and blah, blah, blah. And I presented it to him. And basically I was like, okay, I can't remember his name is Dean or whatever it was. And I was expecting him to give me the opportunity to quote this. I did all the work. I designed this. I laid this out. I took all this kind of time and money. And he said, I'll get back to you. Okay, you're going to get back to me. What does that mean? He said, well, we'll let you quote on this. Hold on 1 second. You'll let me quote on this, meaning what he did was gathered this. And again, for anybody out there, this, again, like you and I, Joe, this will happen one time and then that'll never happen again. And I'm like, 2 weeks later, Joe, I get a blind email with the specs that I designed to quote on my own design. And I'm just like, you have got to be kidding me. And if we don't, meaning as in teach the younger generation, if you will, to have a backbone, absolutely help as much as we can, but also have that ticker in the back of our head saying, okay, now there's a limit and, or there's going to be a point where it's like, okay, is this going forward or not? Had I asked this guy, what's the deal with this? I would have saved myself a lot of time and energy. He would have told me. No, I'm just going to get your information and I'm going to shop it to everybody. That's in essence what he did. And again, it just drives me crazy. But a lot of the younger people don't understand that. And they need to understand that be helpful, but don't get walked on.
I think that comes down to respect a little bit too.
100%.
You know what I mean? Even if the guy's coming to give you a bid on cutting the lawn or taking a tree down, our grandparents, get 3 quotes, all of that, and you tell people that and they appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, because their time has as much value as your time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
to them, I think it's an opportunity to get better collectively
Yep.
from the selling perspective, the
Yep.
buying perspective, and just humbly do your job very, very effectively. And like you said, if you get burned once, that's a very good lesson. That's what a lot of these sales programs try and do. It's on dashboard, and you
Yeah.
have to get from this pile to this color, and then you're going to get the order. Well,
Yeah.
Usually you get the order, and then you fill in all the computer stuff, and
Right.
and they say, look at how well our dashboard, our sales force is working. It's beautiful.
Now, one of the things, and I chuckle because I'm chuckling with you on this because it's so spot on, because it's so skewed, whether it's Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using on your dashboard of potential jobs. At the end of the day, you still have to sell something. Okay, potential is potential. But let me bring you back here in a second, because you have one of the things that you are known for is being the relationship manager for probably some of the largest companies in the world. Now, I'm not going to name names here, but what is it like, Joe? What's the pressure like when you're the relationship conduit, if you will, with these big multi-billion dollar? I mean, you're at a key point here, and how do you have and set boundaries for yourself in situations like that? That's got to be hard, no?
It is, and I think the way I did it was I built a very, very strong team where I always looked for people who were better than me in areas.
Smart.
A guy might be a better salesperson
Yep.
at the local level. A guy
Yep.
might be a better speaker
Yep.
at in front of 500 people. A
Yep.
guy might be a better designer. A guy might have a better perspective on intellectual property.
Yep.
But from all these people, I always tried to learn something. And when we came across something, we had enough of a robust team that understood the objective, that understood the customer, that understood and we quantified the opportunity with these large companies.
Yeah.
It's difficult to sell internally, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
I had one where, again, anecdotal, but I had one where this large QSR wanted to do it was a North American rollout.
Yeah.
It turned out to be the most successful rollout they did for a new product in a beverage segment.
Wow. Okay.
Fantastically
Yeah, right.
successful.
Sure.
The key supply chain manager came to me and said, how fast can you do this? We had to build tools, assembly,
Right.
we didn't have to buy presses, but I mean, it was, probably a $3 or $4 million investment. At the time, we were probably $100 million division of a $4 billion company.
Right.
I said, well, we can get it done in 6 months, but it's all in.
Yeah, right.
He goes, well, we got money. We can fund everything. I said, we don't want your money. We got money.
Yeah.
We can do a CapEx.
Yeah.
So, he said, well, talk to your people and come back to me.
Right.
So I talked to our people locally, and they said, boy, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I said, well, yeah, it is.
Right.
But look at the other side. We'll pay this back in about 7 months.
Yep.
And then we'll get a 5-year deal or whatever we want, long terms. And so, long story short, it was kind of dragging internally. So I said, you know what?
Sorry to interrupt you, but internally from your end or internally from the customer side?
No, the customer was in dire straits. They wanted to push this rollout way up because they were testing in the market off the charts.
Perfect. Got
So
it.
basically, they couldn't make the stuff fast enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Internally at my company, I'm telling the story, and that's where sales comes in too.
Sure.
You got to have the relationships. I knew the CEO. I had met him in our place. I finally told my guy who I reported to in North America, I said, we got to go to London. We got to get this done. And I need the verbal to go ahead because we got to start cutting steel and we got to get on this. He goes, I agree. Let's go. So we get on a plane. We go over there and he goes, well, so we're meeting with the CEO and his, money guys and all this. And it wasn't the money. It was the test. How much skin you want to put in the game.
Right.
So basically, I told the guy, I go, look, if you don't do this, I'm going to take my own money
Yep.
and I'm going to go build the tools, and I'm going to sell the finished goods to you. And then you
Right.
can put them on a bag, and away we go.
Yeah.
He starts laughing. He goes, "You're not going to really do that, are you?" I go, "Oh, yeah."
Yep.
He goes, "Why?" I go, "Because I absolutely, unequivocally trust the supply chain folks
Wow.
I'm working with,
Wow.
and their word is gold because
Yeah.
I've done
Right.
business with them for a long time." So it turned out to be a wonderful thing for our company.
Yep.
We got IP on the product. We got the lion's share of it. We had it all for a while. I guess the point of the story is you got to work those relationships internally as well as externally
Yep.
in dealing with these large companies because I can't do it all. I'm very aware of my limitations, the
Right.
number of hours I'm awake in the day.
Yep.
I would love to be able to do it all myself, but I'm not capable.
Do you think, Joe, that as you were describing that scenario, and did it help that one of the things I know about you is you don't sell commodity products. There's a lot of design and thought and machinery and tooling and material specs and all that kind of stuff, much further than just something that's easily, go to Uline and go and get a quote. Did that help you in that instance? Because it became so sophisticated, it sounded like, and they were like, hey, first of all, we know Joe and we trust him and we trust his team. We also love the fact that Joe wasn't necessarily taking the money and running. He said, no, 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 we've got money as well. We want to do this long term. I mean, I could totally see that being such a win across the board because of the way you played that. You weren't in a hurry to close the deal and take the money. You were more concerned about let's get this done the right way and we'll keep this business forever or a very long time.
Absolutely. And there were some nuances due to the unique nature of the packaging, the
Right.
filling technology, and
Yep.
all of that. But in fairness, in a previous position, going back 10, 15 years, we were asked to get involved with just a 1 gallon with a 53 millimeter
Yep.
closure, a 1 gallon blow molded jug.
Yep.
Pretty much as basic as you can get.
Yep.
And I'm in Chicago, and there's 5 guys who can run this thing, and I'm working for one of the guys who can do it.
Yeah.
So I went in and I talked to the company. I said, there's a bunch of people who could do this. We're a low cost producer. We're not the low cost producer.
Right.
And we're not as close as some of the other guys. You don't have room to go through the wall with this jug, and it's significant volume. But
sure.
What are you looking for?
Right.
And she was very direct. She goes, our quality has become abysmal. We've lost trust with this company we've been doing business with. They've turned over owners 3 times in the last 5 years. All the mergers and acquisitions were going on back then, and still are. But and she goes, we need someone we can trust.
Yep.
I said, well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we can't make this particular thing because we can.
Right.
I said, but we're going to start out. We've got a 4-cavity tool. We've got to get bigger cavitation, and we're going to start out. We're going to be a little bit higher, and then if you're comfortable with our performance and it's mutually beneficial, meaning we can make money at it, then we'll go ahead and do the 8-out tool, or and put in a bigger press and all this. And she was like, "Oh, that's wonderful. I can live with that." And we ended up getting the business, and it was a 5-year deal and new presses, and it was wonderful. But I don't think, to answer your question again, the commodity versus the more specialized package, some of that is into play. For me, it limits the competition if you're in something more specialized. So if you're a young person looking for a career, I'd rather be selling something a little bit more complex.
Yes.
That I can fill a niche with, and I can get paid for, and I can make much better margins, as opposed to running a wheel and running a blow molded jug at X number a minute versus, a guy who's pumping them out 8 at a time. I mean, your point's well taken, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a compelling reason. And I was fortunate enough to have the woman who was running this buy. She understood her business way better than I did. So I'm like, let me go see how this is used, all the normal stuff that, sometimes buyers today, they may not even understand that, or they may not understand where the bottle's even going to and how it's being used, other than it goes to factory XYZ. So
You said a couple of things, especially for those listeners that are in the sales space. So let me point this out because I know you, Joe. You're not somebody to blow smoke at yourself. You said a couple of very, very important things. Number one, you said you asked this buyer, whoever this was, the question, why are you doing this? What are you looking for? And she then exposed her hand and said, our quality is plummeted. We've got a problem. And the other thing that I thought was absolutely brilliant, another thing that a lot of the young sales reps don't do, is they're usually in such a hurry to close the deal and they'll agree to anything. But what you said was really profound. You said, we have a 4-cavity tool. We'll start with that, meaning you were okay to position yourself as their second string, as their backup, before you went and ran full stop and made all kinds of new molds or whatever, which I think is a very brilliant strategy because a lot of people are in such a hurry to get any deal. They don't think this out long term. And you did, where you said, look, yeah, we can do this, but let's start slow. Let's start and make sure that we do meet the quality standards that you're looking for, that we do solve this problem. And then you kind of brought a full circle, Joe, where you said, and then we got all the business. But there's a lot of salespeople out there, especially in the packaging space, that don't think like that. And I think it's a very, very disarming way to get noticed when you're able to say to a whether it's a buyer, decision maker, company, hey, let's be your backup. Let's be your backup, and we can help you, but I don't want you to have to worry about switching over everything to me immediately. Yes, I'd love that, but you know what? Let's start slow. And by doing that, Joe, you put them at ease. She exposed her hand even further, and now you knew what you were dealing with. And you
right.
knew you were dealing with not a let's be the cheapest guy. You knew she had a real problem with her quality, and it was an issue. And you set that up perfectly. I mean, props to you, because that's what we try to teach our salespeople. That's how you break down an opportunity.
Right. And then further, David, the other kind of nugget I learned over my time with various companies, working for my own company, and all these different experiences, was I understand manufacturing,
right?
But I'm not an expert at it.
Yep.
So what I always try to do, again, relationships internally, and I always ask to senior management, saying, okay, we've got 500 million XYZ units we can make.
Yep.
And then you do your budget. Then you do your forecast, because it doesn't do you any good to budget 1 billion units when you don't have that core competency.
Exactly.
And I think what young folks need to do, I get it. I don't mean that disrespectful, but I think what all professionals need to do is find out what core competencies the company has. I started with a company as a broker. This is years ago, but I said basically to the manufacturer, I said, what's your core competencies?
Yeah.
And they said, da, 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 da. And I said, let me see them.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I looked at them, and I've been around enough where I could tell the machine was running correctly.
Yeah,
and you talk to the operator. How often do you run this machine? What's your efficiency? What's your downtime? What's your biggest problem?
Yep.
By building that trust internally, you have a very powerful understanding of what you can do for a company.
Right.
And in that particular instance with the blow molded jugs, I knew we couldn't do what they needed right away. The point of it is core competencies and get relationships with your internal manufacturing team. I mean, I can't, there's a young guy who he's been at this company for 2 years. He's in logistics. Mm-hmm. And he goes, what should I do? He calls me Uncle Joe because, we've got a good relationship. I go, get your behind on an airplane and go to these locations and get to know your team.
Yep.
Because when you have a truck that needs to go from XYZ to ABC, and it's Friday at 6 o'clock, and this guy's got to get home to his kid's baseball game.
Yep.
If he knows it's for you,
Yep.
it'll get done.
Oh, yeah.
And if he knows it's a guy on the phone who leaves his desk at 5 o'clock, who never, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Dave, and I'm sure you've had this experience too.
I hear you.
You know, when a manufacturing person or someone on the production line says, you know, no one's ever asked me this question before.
Yep.
I always say, well, why wouldn't I ask you? You know more about than anybody in the world.
Correct.
Not in the company, but in the world.
Yeah, no
but
kidding.
The guy running the plant doesn't understand. He doesn't want to know.
I know.
He just wants to know it's coming off at 91%.
Yep.
And he's looking at his charts and his Gantt charts. He's got charts all over the building telling you how good he's doing. Well, that's great. But those aren't the people who always know. Sometimes they are. And the bigger the company, the more hands-on you got to dig down and find the right people.
And another thing that's so interesting, as you and I kind of, as we'll say, we're grizzly old veterans here, but what we're seeing now is what you just mentioned too. There's almost like the old days of, just like you said, get on a plane and know your team. Get on a plane and know what you're dealing with, because there will come a time, not possibly, there will come a time when you absolutely need to call that favor to this guy and say, look, I need this out today. I need this on a plane today, not tomorrow, not next week. Can you do it? And if you can't, tell me. But the point is, I'm getting at is, you know, that's another thing that I think is missing that the young people can really follow up on from us older guys is ask the questions. Why are you looking? What's the problem? Just like you said, the guy on the line rarely is even asked a question because no one thinks to ask him. But why wouldn't we ask him? He's run the equipment for 25 years, and he can give us the straight scoop on what is needed versus some buyer who's been there for a year and just goes, I don't know, Sam out there told me the machine's having a problem. How about we just go talk to Sam and find out, and Sam would probably solve the problem for us and say, this is what we need, this is what I got to have. It's that old school approach of going back and doing things like the old days of having those conversations, asking those questions, getting to somebody that actually knows the answer versus just don't bullshit me. Just tell me the truth. You know, and if you don't know, just please tell me I don't know. Yeah, that's okay. You know, so it's, let me ask you a question, because I mean, you and I could talk sales forever. The modern day packaging reseller. I know packaging is a very broad stroke, but one of the things that you and I are both, we're in the packaging space, of course, different tentacles of different things, but the packaging reseller, there's those guys out there that basically have the, and I think they're really, really needed. Now, whether they think they're needed is a different story. For example, you know, the need for a packaging reseller that has the ability to navigate into flexible, to rigid, to machinery, to design, to whatever. Now, I'm not saying knows all those things, but to be able to communicate effectively in all those different areas to see, kind of like what you did before when you were questioning the decision maker or whatever, but it's the ability to talk intelligently. And if you don't know, you don't know. For example, go in and we're talking with a potential opportunity, never worked with them before. And if there's anything that a reseller has the ability to do is they don't just sell paper. They can sell plastic, they can sell flexible, they can sell rigid, they can sell cans, they can sell glass, they can do. The point is they've got to be able to kind of get in the door and ask competent questions, not what are you paying? Like, you got to be able to get into finding out the pain point, finding out what's the big picture here. When are you, by the way, when are you looking to place the order? And how many times have you and I both, Joe, been in those situations? We're looking for 2025. Wait a minute. I just drove to Saginaw, Michigan. I sat in your lobby for 2 hours, and this isn't until 2025. Well, shame on me, because I'm an idiot and I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of people in this packaging reselling space, Joe, that I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing the same, that just don't, I don't want to say think clearly, because they're bright people. They're just not paying attention to the details. It doesn't do me any good to drive to Saginaw, Michigan if the project is for 2025. But so many people are desperate for anything right now. And they're just running. I mean, I've seen it with the cannabis packaging. I don't know if you've crossed into this, but everyone thinks they're going to get rich in cannabis packaging. Oh my God, I'm going to make all this. Have you thought that out? You're dealing with stoners. Now, I'm not saying you can't make money, but really at the core of this, you've got a cash money and a cash business. I get it, but it's highly regulated. And you're dealing with a lot of guys they're probably high most of the time. So what kind of relationship can you really build upon that? So I digress, but I just wanted to kind of go off on that little riff. I don't know if you see that, but it's like, God, how do we encourage the packaging reseller of today that it is a very competent, qualified business to be in? Packaging is so critical. It's so needed. It's not going away. I don't care whether it's a biodegradable to a returnable, recyclable. Packaging is so critical. And if you don't, make yourself invaluable or a partner to your customer, you're going to be on the outside looking in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well said. I had the opportunity to work in distribution for about 3 years. Started out as a broker for this company, then ended up working for them, helping with their sales. My area of success was we had to have something going on already or get our foot in the door, as you alluded to, David.
Yep.
And then we would be able to say, hey, we're doing this bottle. What goes on the top of this bottle?
Exactly.
Well, we've got a closure, but we're looking at a hand pump, whatever.
Yep.
And then, then again, you get into the internal team. They've got relationships with the closure guys or the pump guys, whatever the case might be. And, then you bundle it up, say, well, I could have one truck and, throw a pallet of these things on the end of it. Would that be easier for you?
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, that might be nice. And,
right.
Then you don't have to worry about the 16-week lead time and, all of that. But when I was like kind of cold calling or trying to get my foot in the door as a distribution general line packaging salesman, it was very, very difficult. And the way that I was successful, again, was just relationships. Well, I play softball with this guy, and he said for me to call you and da-da-da-da-da. And there's nothing to lose.
And having the guts to do it, Joe.
Oh, you have to.
And
it's okay if someone says, you know what? No, we don't need that. You're a nice fellow and all that. And, you gotta, I don't know what the batting average is, but I know it is on hiring good salespeople.
Right.
If I could get 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 5, I thought I was Babe Ruth.
Yeah, you got
it, man. Because, they're hard to come by.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you do the ITW numbers, 80-20 and all that, I mean, I think a good salesperson is more like 12%.
Well, you mentioned something that I thought was another very, very cool clue for a new salesperson, and it's that value add. Now, you didn't call it value add. You were talking about, hey, you're getting these bottles, but what else do you need? Oh, you need a lid. Oh, and the lid, what if we put it all together in a pack so you don't have to carry 3 different SKUs? They'll be finished, and there'll be one part number in one truck. And I often think a lot of packaging people don't understand that value add is so critical sometimes, could make the difference between making a good margin and making nothing or very little. Meaning there are companies, if they know that their $15 to $20 or $25 an hour line employee doesn't have to assemble something, and that can immediately go from a carton or a kit right onto a finished product and speed that entire process up. The ability to do that and the ability to have a supplier do that for a packaging reseller to sell to their client is genius, because I've gotten more orders on doing that where people are like, yeah, but we buy lids from XYZ company, but they don't put the induction liner in there for us. We have to do it ourselves. And then, by the way, when it's not in there properly, we throw the whole lid in the liner away. and blah, 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 blah. And the point is it just so spot on. And it's little things like that that really can make a huge difference when it comes to being able to close a deal and being able to be taken seriously.
And also on that example is, decorate the cap, make it with the company's logo and
Thank you.
I mean their brand on there, because
Yep.
even if they don't use it, they'll
Yep.
say, boy, we were thinking of a promo for
Yep.
fall's pumpkin spice, and the buyer might throw it on the table to the marketing team and they'd say, boy, this is genius.
Yeah, right.
We'd love to do this. Maybe we'll do an in and out. All of a sudden your profit goes from 10% to 30%.
Yep.
And you're the guy who's doing the promo for these people now.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
it's just, again, core competency, listen to the customer, and kind of helping these people get better.
Yeah.
And give them ideas that now, I was in the bottle business. We were brokering bottles. Glass business is brutal.
Yeah.
You got to run 90-some%
Oh,
efficiency, all this stuff. So I'm going to make this pitch out in California, and this company, they were old school wine, and they were like, this label looked like a Converse All-Star gym shoe logo.
Yeah, right.
It was old school.
Yep.
And I said that we had a one person on our team who was really a good artist.
Yeah.
I said, would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Would you just take a couple days and make a label for this bottle and this product?
Yep.
And go to the liquor store and look at what's on the shelf. And I brought that into them, and they were like, this is a great idea. Our marketing department's been talking about this for 6 months. Now, we didn't sell any more glass. We didn't get any more business, but they were so appreciative of it.
Correct.
That we were thinking about their business in their market. Now, we were certainly not experts. We were very upfront about that.
Yep.
But just the effort. I mean, it was 3 days effort for our team. And, the buyer looked at it for 15 seconds, said, can I keep this? Because I'm going to a marketing meeting.
Yep. Well, and to that point as well, it's also understanding that some of these really big potential customers, it just also shows, like you were describing, they're so old school and set in their ways, it would take an act of Congress for them to make a new label. But you guys did it in a couple of days and got them thinking in a different direction, something that probably would have taken 10 more meetings for them to go, hey, have we ever thought about a new design? And those are the kind of partnership things that a good sales rep will be able to bring to the table to stand out and be different.
I got another one for you.
Bring it.
I got to tell you this anecdote. We were asked to do a cap, a 38-400 cap, right? Very as simple as it gets.
Yeah, right.
There's presses running 256 cavitation. I mean, simple as it gets.
Right.
The guy said, he goes, you guys got some capability in that area. Would you be interested? I said, well, it's kind of a commodity thing. And I don't really know our cavitation, but I know it's not a stack mold and that 256 cavitation. I said, but let me take a look at it. Let me get you some samples. And then somehow, some way, I got out of the company, and then I called this guy on something else, and he goes, hey, we finally got those caps. I go, yeah, how'd it work out? I go, did they bring them down? Did they,
Right.
I said, maybe did they decorate them? Like, we had talked about and put the logo of the end user on there and all that. He goes, no, this guy came in. He didn't even bring the caps to me. He sent them UPS. The guy, now this is the owner of the company. He was livid. He goes, what's wrong with that? I was like, I have no idea.
I know.
I said, I'll be glad to get that done for you if you'd like.
Straight.
As a courtesy.
Yep.
And
it just, what it says a lot, Joe. And it really, and I just think, we both are passionate about packaging. We both really want to do what's right. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to common sense. And also comes down to doing what's right for the customer. And just like you were describing with that cap, you could send it to the guy UPS and go, I don't know, go watch Oprah or something or whatever you're doing. But you could actually bring it to the guy and literally create a relationship that will last for the next 10 years or more. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, you look for those moments.
Yep.
As everybody knows, all we have on this earth is time.
Yep.
and how we elect to spend that time to get us the biggest return on our investment at work,
Yep.
what we do with our other parts of our lives
Yep.
is very, very important.
Yep.
And, do things humbly, do things intentionally, do things with a good vision on what you can do to help people, customers,
Yep.
and things will go well. And
Yeah.
it's going to take time, though.
And there is no shortcut to that, Joe. That's such a great place for us to wrap up, because if there was anything that really summarizes kind of what you've taught me over the years too, is the fact that it's going to take time. It's not something overnight. And do the right thing and think things through. If there's anything that really would probably sum up our chat here today for the younger crowd or anybody that's new to the packaging space, you don't have to be young, but it's to know that there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. You do the blocking and tackling to lead to get to the end zone. You cannot just take a shortcut and just throw Hail Marys. You have to be able to do the little things, ask the questions, make the relationship, follow through. Man, I'm telling you, it was such a good reminder for everybody. And I wanted to do this, Joe, from a packaging standpoint and a packaging sales standpoint, because I think it's such a underserved industry right now. I think we've seen a lot of people get let go. I've seen a lot of companies that have let go their seasoned sales rep. And now you've got a bunch of guys that don't know what they're doing and are literally selling on cheap, and wondering why they're not getting anywhere. And if there's anything I want to do, and I know you do too, is to straighten that out. And no, this is a very, very viable industry. But you gotta do it the right way. Gotta do it the right way. I had a blast, Joseph.
Thank you, David. That was most enjoyable, and I hope it's beneficial to the audience. Anything I can ever do for you, let me know. I can get on one of these things anytime, and
we will do it.
It's a joy to do, and it's our obligation to help out the younger folks.
I agree. Thanks, brother. Hey, and by the way, what time should we be over for Thanksgiving? You doing the smoked turkey or just the fryer?
We've done them all over the years, and we're so fortunate. We're going to be guests this year.
I
so we
love
don't have
it.
to host.
You know what? That's awesome. Good for you guys. Thanks again for everything. I'm glad you were here.